Welcome to the Art of Conscious Living TV. I'm very pleased today to have as my guest Bob Voelk from Transitional Technologies. It's an incredible company that is helping us to save gas. We're all concerned about that, and we're here to talk about his life and the founder of the company, of what his vision is, and where he's at today with this incredible technology. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Victoria.
How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much.
Well, let's start from the very beginning.
Okay.
When you were a young man, what were you like? Did you have an inkling that you would be doing this in your later part of your life?
I really didn't, but I've always been interested in energy, particularly alternative energies. And even as a young boy, I used to go through the old Britannicas and the encyclopedias and look at the chemistry involved and always think, well, why aren't we pursuing this? So it's always been an interest, but I never thought I would be doing it full time.
Right. So, Bob, when you say pursuing this, what is this? What does this really mean to you?
Well, transitional technologies is, we obviously need to change how we do things, how we power, how we energize society and the world, but we can't just drop everything and throw hundreds of millions of cars away and automatically pick up, for instance, electric vehicles. We have to transition society from where we're at now to where we want to be.
Henceforth, the name of your company,
Transitional Technologies. Exactly.
Which means slowly weaning off of the gas dependent, oil dependent.
Absolutely. And not only transitioning or moving away from it, but we don't want to throw all those cars away. That wouldn't be right either. We have to figure out how we can utilize what's there as we transition into the new technologies.
So as a young man, as a young boy, were you thinking about these things of the state of the world and the environment?
I was more interested in the inventive process. I started inventing, even at 8 and 9 years old, I would build prototypes in the garage and always, I've done various patents over time, but really my passion is always into the energy field, and so that's really where we began to have good success.
Well, let's get to it. Tell me about this incredible kit that's installed in cars and exactly what it does for
Sure.
the consumers.
Sure. Well, this is a 4th generation. The original was just cobbled together with parts from Home Depot because I didn't really think it would work. I had done some research. I knew I wanted it for our vehicle because gas was hugely expensive and it was a big part of our budget. And so we cobbled together some parts, and lo and behold, it worked. So now, 7, 8 years later, this is our last generation, our newest generation, and it is comprised of 3 main pieces. I don't know if you want me to talk about that now or not, but the guts of the system is the generator. This
Yes.
is where all of the fun happens. This takes regular water and breaks it into its atomic structure, which is hydrogen and oxygen, right?
So it's water
H2O.
and electricity.
That's it. Water, and it uses the electricity from your car battery to break that water into clean hydrogen and oxygen. The water is contained in just a simple reservoir that's included in the kit.
Which is distilled water only.
It has to be distilled water because you're putting electricity into it, and regular water, drinking water, even rainwater has things in it that will make it go dirty. So distilled water is what you have to do. But you do have to put a little bit of activator in it, which is a couple of spoonfuls of activator to allow the electricity to go through the water.
And what is the activator made out of?
It's really just, it's used in making soap. It's lye. It's a very safe product. You can find it at your local hardware store. We use a lab grade because that's what we prefer to do. But it's just a few tablespoons is all it takes. And then once you add it, all you have to do for many, many months is just top it off with regular water. You don't have to keep adding it and adding it and adding it. It's just for setup mostly.
Okay, and the black apparatus?
So then once the gas is created, which the water flows out of this to the generator and then comes back up into here, and then the water continues to circulate, but the gas is separated and it goes through a filter, and this is a 1-micron filter because you don't want anything dirty going into your vehicle. And so it filters out any of the steam, any of the activator, so that the only thing then going into your engine is just the pure hydrogen and oxygen.
And you have very simple brackets here to keep it
Yes,
in place.
and so because this is a unique design, we designed our own brackets that are included with it. We even include the bolts to be able to bolt it up, and the screws and the wiring and.
And where are you bolting it and applying this
Well,
bracket?
there are two main places that
area
our
of the
customers
car.
put them in. One is between the radiator and the front grille of your car, which a lot of times there's plenty of room there. That's probably the main area. And the other is right in front of the wheels in the fender well area. And this generator, you don't have to access it, you don't have to reach it. So you kind of put it in and it does its work off to the side. And then the reservoir goes up close to your engine where it's easy to be able to open up the cap and add more water.
All right, so let's talk about, for certain cars and makes of different cars, the gas mileage that you're going to be saving on gas.
Sure.
Is it a 20 to 50% outcome?
Yeah, we try to be conservative. The average is 20 to 50%. It really ranges towards the top of that, but we tell people, look, 20 to 50% to be conservative. When we first put a unit on a heavy-duty work van that we had, we were spending over $600 a month in fuel, and we got a 40% increase. And what that resulted in was saving over $250 a month in fuel, and we used about $1 worth of distilled water to do it. And that really was the impetus to start this business. I said, my gosh, people need to know about this. They need to hear about it. I couldn't believe that I didn't see it anywhere. I couldn't believe that it wasn't everywhere.
Yes, and you're in negotiation right now for the trucking industry.
We are. In fact, I flew to Australia, spent about 3 weeks there. We have a larger unit using the same design, but a little bit larger, and we have two of them then that go in a commercial unit that we have. We have a welded racks, and it's very commercial, built to try to withstand the road, and heavier filtration and so forth. And we've seen anywhere from 20 to 35% increase in the trucking industry, which many of your trucking companies, they may write checks of $800,000 to $1 million a month in fuel costs. So now if you're able to reduce that consumption and clean the exhaust, it's a win-win for everybody involved.
Well, let's speak about cleaning the exhaust. How does that actually happen?
It's really quite amazing that such a small amount of gas affects the emissions so much. We had a truck, a large diesel truck in San Leandro, and they have a test called a stomp test. And that's where they stomp 3 times hard on the accelerator and let it up. And that's what, every time they let up, that's when you see the black billowing smoke that stinks, and that's the diesel fuel. So they measure the efficiency of a truck by how clear that gas is that comes out of there. So we took our unit to Peterbilt in San Jose, and that's what they did, was they hooked the unit up, and the supervisor said there's no way that that unit is going to affect this big truck. So, well, let's see. We turned it on, they stomped it, and now not only was there no black smoke, there was barely visible any white smoke. It was just a very light translucent. The truck driver said, oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like this. The superintendent had me turn it off and on 8 times because he couldn't believe it. And every time it dropped the emissions coming out of that diesel truck by an average of 50%.
So it sounds like for those who are concerned, who are driving older vehicles
Yes.
and the DMV and getting smog tests, this is
Yes.
going to help.
Yes, in fact, we had a gentleman who had an older car. He lived down in LA. He drove up from LA to get one of our units because his car could not pass smog. So we took his unit down. It was an older Trans Am. And he hooked it up. He had a friend who runs a smog station. They turned on the car, and of course all of the emissions, particulates, and all of the chemicals that make your car stink and smoke were too high. He turned the kit on. The mechanic started to bang the side of his machine because everything dropped so fast he thought his machine was broken. So it dramatically dropped everything to the point where it passed. And on top of that, he ended up adding, I think he was getting about 8 or 9 miles a gallon, and he was still getting 13 or 14 miles a gallon in addition to getting better mileage, or the better emissions on the thing.
So how about the buildup of all of the of the engine, the buildup in the...
That's really big. In fact, even the newer cars, because they've been tweaked by the computers to be so efficient, the problem that they're having is the carbon buildup inside the engine. And it builds a layer on your valves and inside the workings of the engine. And the recommendations from the manufacturers, they're saying, well, you should think about every 15 or 20,000 miles go in and have this extensive cleaning done if you want your car to remain clean. Well, because we're injecting the hydrogen and oxygen in there with the fuel, when it combusts with the gasoline or the diesel, it turns into water vapor. That's the only side effect. It goes back into water, which superheats into steam, which cleans the inside of your engine. And it knocks the carbon loose and drives it out the tailpipe.
All right, well, let me understand this. Is there any point that the water, the hydrogen, will be mixing actually with the gas?
Yes. So,
and is that okay for that to happen?
Absolutely. What happens is it actually mixes with the incoming air. So your air filter, you're drawing air into your engine. It goes, the gas comes out of the reservoir and through our filter and is introduced with the incoming air. So it mixes with your incoming air. It won't explode until the gasoline or diesel explodes it. So it's very safe that way.
So now you've said a very key word, and I was going to get to that. So let's segue into that explosion. When everybody's thinking about hydrogen, they think, oh no, I don't want that in my car because possible explosion.
That's a good point. And it's probably not the best terminology to use, but you know, gasoline explodes within your engine too.
Yes.
But it explodes in a controlled manner. Gasoline can be our friend. That's what drives our industry right now, correct? Hydrogen can be our friend, but a much cleaner friend. And so all that hydrogen does is work with what already happens in that engine, but makes it happen 10 times faster and 10 times cleaner than without it. We've had people who failed emissions tests twice, and they would bring their vehicle in, and we would just treat it with the gas. And it cleaned everything up to the point where they could go back, and then they passed the exams. So it cleans the inside of your engine out as it works.
So what kind of tests have you done to show the safety of it? And has it had to pass tests to be for safety?
Well, we're certainly always doing tests. Everything that we're doing is try to create as safe of an environment as possible. Unlike the hydrogen like you see with the manufacturers, where you can have a hydrogen Mercedes if you have a budget of $500,000. Well, that's not practical for somebody who has kids and they're trying to pay the bills every month. The reason it's expensive is because they have to have a special engine and big, huge tanks with compressed gas that sits behind the kids in the back seat. We don't want any of that. This tank sits up front near the engine, but you're not compressing or storing anything.
That's a key factor.
It is very key.
Okay, so you're not holding it like a hydrogen reactor, such as the reactor in Japan that Fukushima that blew.
No.
So that's where all the problem was, that it's storing it, and then the bars are melting down.
With the radiation, that's right. In fact, it's interesting.
So there's none of that in there. There's no radiation. There's no meltdown. There's no storage.
No storage whatsoever. And because there's the hydrogen is actually only created in this little space right here. The rest of this is all water that continues to circulate. So that little bit is then filtered through the filter and then to the engine of your car. As soon as you turn your car off, immediately, it stops making all production of gases. And so there's nothing under pressure. What little residual is left is drawn into your engine. That's it. So there's nothing at all being stored there.
All right, well, let's stay on this point just a little bit longer.
Sure.
Let's say some sparks are from another area in the car and are getting close to the generator or touch the generator or touch the distilled water. Is there anything that could happen there?
The only thing that will happen at the very worst is that little bit of gas will catch, will explode or what have you. The reason
So what are we talking about? Again,
we don't have that issue. Let's put it that way.
But I'm going with worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario.
How big would that explosion be?
Yeah, the worst case scenario, it's stopped at this filter.
Yes.
So what happens is, if anything happens here, it stops here, or if you have, for instance,
when you say here, that you're pointing to the filter,
or here.
Okay.
We've actually done testing in our shop where we exploded the gas. And the only thing that happens is you hear a poof, and then that's it. And then you can turn it back on and it resumes. If you have an older vehicle that has a, where it backfires, it will backfire and stop right here at the filter because it's a 1 micron filter. The flame can't penetrate through to get anywhere else. So unless you open this up and stick a lighter to it, none of the little bit of gas in here is ever going to have any issues whatsoever.
And if you did stick...
it stops. It just stops it. It absorbs it. The water absorbs it. The generator absorbs it, and nothing happens. We've even had 3 of our customers over the years that have actually had front-end collisions, and because we don't know, I mean, this was all new technology, and I told people everything we've tested shows that it's perfectly safe. Well, on their own, our customers contacted us, and they had front-end collisions that destroyed their cars. And it hit the generator while it was operating. The only thing that happened, it destroyed the generator. It stopped working. No flames, no explosions, no anything.
And what kind of testing and regulations do you need to have this out in the market?
Well, there's certainly a lot more regulations that need to happen.
For your company?
Well, sure, with the company, with the technology as a whole is still very new. Because of that, there are no laws written because nobody knew to write the laws for it. So our goal is to try to legitimize this industry, work with the politicians, work with the people and say, let's get this in. This should be available at the dealership. This should be available anywhere. People should be able to buy this at any point, put it in, just like going to an auto parts store and say, well, I want a stereo, I want a hydrogen generator, I want my fuel savings, I want cleaner emissions. It's not quite that easy, but we're working on that.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's very easy to install.
It is very easy.
For instance, you, who are very familiar with it, how long would it take you to install?
About a half a day for me.
Half a day?
About a half a day. A few hours. Half a day, 4 or 5 hours, if you know what you're doing. In fact, my daughter actually put one in her Mazda. She said, Dad, I would like to try this. I said, let's do it. So she put on some dirty clothes, pulled it in. Now she understands the technology. She knows how it works. And it took her about 5 hours to put that unit into her vehicle. What we are trying to do is continually improve the unit to make it faster and faster and faster. And that's really this particular version is easier than anything that's out there today. It's molded, it's thin, it's half the size, it's designed not to leak, it's designed to try to mount it quickly, and it's much lighter than anything that's out there. And we had to raise about $300,000 just to get us to this point.
Okay.
So
let me connect the dots here. You have a generator here, and somehow you're entering into the car's generator system.
Well, what we're doing...
And so there's a hose from your generator
That's
into...
correct. The hoses come out of this, out of the top
These 3 hoses here.
Up
I can see
this.
these 3 hoses here. Okay.
That's right. There's 3 here and 3 at the bottom.
Okay.
And we provide the hoses and a little manifold that brings these down into one hose.
Okay.
So eventually it's one hose out.
All right. And that goes into what? Into the car?
Into the reservoir.
Into the reservoir.
Into the reservoir.
And the reservoir goes into?
And so there's 3 of these that are used in a vehicle. So the water comes out of the bottom and into the bottom of the generator. The electricity of the car, when you turn it on, begins to create the hydrogen inside of this. So by the time the water gets to the top, it's already hydrogen and oxygen gas. It comes out of there and back into the reservoir.
It's like electrolysis. Like
it is exactly
water,
electrolysis. It's
electrical heating the water.
Exactly. And
so at what point does it? At what point and where does it go into the car?
So the water is filled about this high.
Yes.
Okay. So when the water and the gas come back up, the water drops off and continues to circulate, continues to work. The gas then separates and floats, and that's up here. And so then the gas comes out of this one, through the filter, and into your air intake of your vehicle. And that's where it's drawn in and mixes with the air and the fuel.
So it's the air take. So we have a filter for the car also.
Yes.
So it's before that.
Well, this is the filter.
Do we still use that filter for the car?
Oh, sure, sure. You don't change anything at all to your normal car.
So from the filter here, you're going into the valve of the intake of the car.
That's right. So your air filter that you keep in your car that filters the incoming air, this is injected just a little after that. And so it goes in and it's drawn in with the incoming air so that it mixes with the air and goes into and is drawn into the engine then.
So it makes me think that perhaps we're going to be breathing gas or not.
Not at all. Not at all. It's the same thing as what
Because
happens
you did
to,
mention there was gas, so the viewers are going to be trying to figure this out as I'm figuring it out here. And you said you had water in the reservoir.
That's right.
Gas at the top.
That's right. So, gas,
So
the
with no
gas is
smell
what's
of the
created.
gas at all.
No. It's a closed system. So there's nothing that you smell. By the time it comes out of here, it is so clean and pure, you
Right.
can't see it.
But the closed system is outside of the filters here. You're going into the air intake of the car.
Correct.
So there was gas at one point there with the water. So
It's
is that not?
It's the gas up here is a gas. It's not a liquid gas like gasoline. So it's an aromatic type gas. All right. It is hydrogen. It's lighter than air, and so it floats and it gets drawn in, goes through here, and it mixes with the incoming air. So it's not a liquid like gasoline.
Okay,
would
so
be.
that's a key word. It's hydrogen gas opposed to gas per se, because
Right.
gas has a very distinctive
It does. It most definitely does.
scent to it.
In a normal motor, the gas is injected inside the motor. You never smell it because it's injected inside of the motor. This you never smell because it's drawn in with the air, and it will only do its work when it's inside the engine, never any other time. In fact, it can even be drawn through turbos and superchargers on cars, mixes with the air, goes right on into the engine, will not ignite until the gasoline or diesel does.
And there's all different sizes of generators depending on the
Correct.
size of the engine of your.
That's right.
Vehicle.
This is our largest vehicle. This is our third size. We have four sizes. We have a very tiny one for 4-cylinder cars. We have a mid-size one for 6-cylinder. This is for your 8-cylinder cars. And then we have a larger one for big pickup trucks or small semi-rigs. And then the big rigs, we actually use 2 of those larger
And
ones.
how many have you sold to at this point in time?
Gosh,
Approximately.
many thousands. I don't have the numbers for you because we have been selling now since these we just introduced in last year when we introduced them to our group. So these we're selling very quickly, but these are brand new. Overall, we've sold many thousands of these kits, and we sell maybe 30 different nations around the world. You know, here gas is expensive, but if you go over to Europe or to different areas, some of them are spending $7, $8, $9 a gallon. So they're desperate for any kind of technology that can give them some relief from the pocket.
Well, Bob, we just have a few moments left,
Okay.
and I'd like to ask you to share what you would like the viewer to know about this technology, about your passion and about your company, and about the world at where it's at right now with the way of being oil dependent.
Sure.
And how this is helping. What's really dear to your heart right now that you'd like to share?
Well, certainly our burden is to be able to see people have a technology that can right now reduce emissions and right now help them with their budgets at home.
Henceforth, global warming.
Well, absolutely. These
contributing
if you
a positive
can
to
reduce
it.
your emissions anywhere from 50 to 85%. We have verified tests where we have reduced the emissions coming out of a vehicle so clean that you can stick your nose to the exhaust pipe and it smells sweet like ozone. Why aren't we doing this now? This should be something, if there are 100 million cars out there and now you've reduced emissions by 80%, with technology we have today, we don't have to wait for another 20 years. Every time you watch all of the breakthroughs having to do with hydrogen and all of the alternative energies, the scientists say, well, in another 20 years it'll be ready. And we don't have 20 years. So let's use what we have now, and as we transition, at least we can begin that process of cleaning up the environment as well as being able to save people money in the process.
Well, Bob, it's been a great pleasure and a great honor to
Thank
meet
you.
you and speak with you.
Thanks, Victoria.
Thank you. Thank you very much. From the Art of Conscious Living, do take care of yourselves and take care of others. Thank you.